You're fired. Leave now.
I own this company.
The CEO's daughter-in-law fired me at 17 on her first morning without even looking up from her phone. At 10:00, she walked into an emergency board meeting expecting an apology. Instead, she discovered that the gray-haired woman, whose badge she had tossed into a trash, can own 74% of the company, and had spent the previous 6 weeks investigating her family. Hello, my name is Evelyn Mercer. I am 62 years old, a widow, a mother, and the controlling shareholder of Mercer Aeronautics in St. Louis, Missouri. But most people at the company did not know that last part. To them, I was Evelyn from Records Compliance. I wore sensible shoes, drove an 11-year-old Honda, and ate lunch from the same blue container almost every day. My badge gave me access to the archive rooms, but not the executive floor. That was exactly how I wanted it. 34 years earlier, my husband, Thomas, and I had started Mercer Aeronautics in our garage. We made precision components for medical helicopters and emergency aircraft. I understood contracts, cash flow, and people. Together, we turned 2 workbenches and a second-hand mill into a company employing 900 people. When Thomas died from cancer, I inherited his shares. Later, I bought out 2 early investors. My ownership reached 74%, held through a private trust. Public filings named the trust, not me. Only the board, our attorney, and the chief financial officer knew I controlled it. I could have taken the chairwoman's office. I chose not to. Power changes the way people behave around you. Once employees know you can change their lives with one sentence, every smile becomes polished. Every complaint disappears before it reaches your door. So after my husband's death, I stepped away from daily management and placed a respected operations executive named Martin Hale in the CEO position. For 11 years, Martin performed well. Revenue grew. Salaries improved. We opened a second production plant in Illinois. I trusted him enough to let him manage without feeling my hand on his shoulder. Then, 6 months before I was fired, the numbers began to whisper. Travel expenses rose by 40%. A consulting firm called Northstar Strategy received 3 payments totaling $1.8 million, but no department could explain what it had delivered. A supplier we had used for 15 years was suddenly replaced by a new company charging 18% more. When I asked Martin about it during a private dinner, "Expansion costs," he said, "nothing unusual." Then he changed the subject. That was when I returned to Mercer Aeronautics as a temporary records compliance analyst. The official story was that I was an old friend of a board member helping digitize contracts. Martin knew I was there, but he believed I was reviewing historical files for insurance purposes. I did not correct him. For 6 weeks, I listened. I learned that Martin's son, Caleb, had recently married a woman named Vanessa Cole. Vanessa described herself online as a corporate transformation specialist. Her actual experience consisted of 11 months at a marketing agency, 4 months at a luxury real estate firm, and a failed lifestyle brand that still owed money to 3 vendors. Yet Martin created a new position for her, executive vice president of strategic culture. Her salary was $310,000. On the Monday she started, a black SUV stopped in front of the building at 7:52. Vanessa stepped out wearing a white designer coat and sunglasses, although the sky was gray. A young assistant followed her carrying 2 bags and a silver laptop. By 18:05, she had complained about the lobby flowers, the carpet, and the age of the receptionist. At 18:12, she entered records compliance with 2 security officers. I was scanning a vendor contract when she stopped at my desk. "Who are you?" she asked. "Evelyn Mercer, temporary records compliance." She kept scrolling on her phone. "Why is a temporary employee using a permanent workstation?" "Because Mr. Hale authorized the review." Her thumb stopped. Not because she recognized my name. She did not. She was irritated that I had answered with confidence. "I'm restructuring this division," she said. "Your services are no longer required." The department manager, Denise Park, stepped forward. "Mems Cole Hale. Evelyn is in the middle of a board authorized." Vanessa raised one finger without looking at her. "If you interrupt me again, I'll restructure your position too." The room went silent. One of the security officers, Ray Delgado, recognized me. His eyes widened, but I gave him a small shake of my head. Finally looked up. "Badge," she said. I removed it slowly and placed it in her open palm. She examined my photograph, smiled, and dropped the badge into Denise's trash can. "Security will escort you out." I closed the contract on my screen. Then, I picked up my blue lunch container and faced her. "You should prepare for an emergency board meeting at 10. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. "Excuse me?" Executive conference room. Bring Martin, Caleb, and every contract connected to North Star strategy. Her uncertainty turned into a laugh. "You don't schedule board meetings." "No," I said. "But the owner does." I walked away before she could ask what I meant. In the elevator, Ray whispered, "Mrs. Mercer, do you want me to stop this?" "No. Save the security footage from this morning. Make 2 copies, and do not tell Martin." The elevator doors opened into the lobby. My phone rang. It was our general counsel. "Evelyn," she said, "we found the owner of North Star." I looked back toward the elevator. "Who is it?" "Vanessa's brother." I did not go home. I crossed the street to a small hotel where Miriam had reserved a conference room under another name. Our independent audit team was waiting inside. So was Samuel Reed, the company's chief financial officer. Samuel looked as though he had not slept. He pushed a folder toward me. "There is more." Inside were wire transfers, invoices, and approval records. North Star Strategy belonged to Vanessa's brother, Lucas Cole. The company had no office, no employees, and no record of performing consulting work. Its registered address was a mailbox store outside Phoenix. Martin had approved the first payment. Caleb had approved the second. The third carried Samuel's electronic authorization. I looked at him. "Did you approve this?" "No." His voice broke. "Someone used my credentials. Why didn't you report it?" He stared at the table. "I did." Martin said it was an internal technology error. The next morning, he showed me photographs of my daughter leaving a recovery clinic. Samuel's daughter had struggled with addiction in college. She had been sober for 3 years. Her recovery was private. He threatened to send the photographs to her employer. Samuel continued. "He said I could protect her, or I could protect the company." Anger rose through me, cold and controlled. Stealing money was one thing. Using a young woman's recovery as a weapon was another. "You should have come to me," I said. "I tried. Your assistant told me you were traveling." I turned to Miriam. "I wasn't traveling." "We checked," she said. "For 4 months, messages addressed to you were redirected to Martin's office." That explained the silence I had mistaken for stability. Martin had not merely hidden expenses. He had built a wall around me. At 84-3, I called an emergency meeting under the authority of the Mercer Family Trust. All directors were ordered to attend in person or by secure video. Miriam sent a preservation notice freezing the deletion of emails, financial records, and security footage. At A7:51, Martin called me. I let it ring twice before answering. "Evelyn," he said warmly, "there seems to have been an unfortunate misunderstanding. Does the misunderstanding have a name?" He sighed. "Vanessa is enthusiastic. It's her first day. She didn't know who you were. That is the only useful thing she has done." Silence. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means she showed me how she treats someone she believes has no power." His voice hardened. "You were never supposed to be interacting with executive leadership." There it was. Not an apology. A complaint that I had left the corner where he thought I belonged. 10 o'clock, Martin. "We should discuss this privately. The board doesn't need to be dragged into a family embarrassment." North Star Strategy received $1.8 million from my company. That makes it a board matter. He stopped breathing for one long second. Then he said, "You don't understand what you found. Good. You can explain it under oath." I ended the call. At 9:06, Denise sent Miriam a photograph of a document she had found in the shred bin outside Vanessa's new office. It was a draft announcement naming Caleb Hale as the next CEO. Beneath it was a restructuring plan that eliminated 127 jobs in St. Louis while moving their functions to an outside management company. That management company was controlled by Lucas Cole. At 9:19, our technology director reported that someone was attempting to erase Vanessa's email account. The preservation lock blocked it. The login came from Martin's office. At 9:31, I received a text from an unknown number. Yo TKYO OWNHE KY. CHEKTLO at GRMNT. Attached was a photograph of a document bearing my signature. The agreement pledged the Mercer Family Trust shares as collateral for a $40 million loan. If the company violated its financial covenants, control could transfer to a private investment group called Red Harbor Capital. My signature looked real. It was not. I had not signed the document. For the first time that morning, I felt afraid. The theft from North Star was ugly, but limited. The loan agreement was a weapon aimed at the heart of the company. If enforceable, it could strip the trust of its shares and place Mercer Aeronautics in the hands of strangers. Miriam read the photograph twice. If this is authentic, they didn't plan to steal a few million, she said. They planned to steal everything. At 9:42, we learned Red Harbor Capital had been created 8 months earlier by an attorney who had attended Caleb and Vanessa's wedding. At 9:48, the board began arriving. At 9:55, I walked back across the street carrying my blue lunch container and a black folder. Ray met me at the entrance. "Mrs. Mercer," he said quietly, "Vanessa ordered security to keep you out." "And what did you tell her?" He smiled. "That security works for the company's owner." When I entered the executive conference room, Vanessa was sitting in my husband's old chair. That detail hurt more than I expected. Thomas had chosen that chair when the company opened its first real office. The brown leather was worn at one arm, where he used to tap his wedding ring while thinking. After his death, I had asked that it remain in the boardroom. Vanessa leaned back in it, as if it were a throne. Martin sat to her right. Caleb sat to her left. 6 directors occupied the remaining seats. 3 more appeared on screens along the wall. Vanessa looked at my lunch container and laughed softly. "Why is she here?" No one answered. I placed the container on the side table, walked to the head of the room, and removed the black folder from under my arm. "Good morning. I call this emergency meeting of the Mercer Aeronautics Board to order." Vanessa glanced at Martin. "Is this a joke?" Martin stood. "Evelyn, sit down." He did. Miriam distributed a 1-page ownership statement. Vanessa skimmed it, frowned, then read it again. "The Mercer Family Trust holds 74% of all voting shares," I said. "I am the trust's sole trustee and beneficiary. Under Section 4 of the company bylaws, I may call an emergency board meeting and remove executive officers for cause." Vanessa looked from the paper to me. "You're a records clerk." "No, I was an owner learning what her executives do when they believe she is invisible." Caleb's face turned pale. Martin tried to recover. "Evelyn has always enjoyed these dramatic tests. Her ownership is real, but she has not been involved in operations for years. I suggest we adjourn until everyone has independent counsel." Request denied. I pressed a button on the table. The wall screen displayed invoices from North Star Strategy. "Vanessa, what services did North Star provide?" She folded her arms. "Show us the work." "It's confidential." "From the company that paid for it." "You're twisting my words." I changed the slide. North Star's registration appeared beside a photograph of Lucas Cole. "Is this your brother?" Vanessa looked at Caleb. Caleb said, "North Star was Martin's decision." Martin stared at his son. "Be careful." The alliance cracked faster than I expected. I displayed the transfer approvals and Samuel's written statement. Then I played security video, showing Martin entering Samuel's office after midnight and photographing a password stored inside a locked desk drawer. Martin stood so suddenly that his chair rolled backward. "This meeting is illegal." That footage was obtained without authorization. It was recorded by company cameras inside company property. Miriam said, "Your employment agreement authorizes monitoring in financial access areas." Vanessa rose. "I don't have to sit here and be insulted." "You may leave," I said, "but federal investigators are already being contacted, and the records preservation order applies to you." She froze. Caleb whispered, "Federal." I placed the forged loan agreement on the screen. No one moved. "This document pledges my shares to Red Harbor Capital," I said. "My signature is forged. The notary seal belongs to a notary who died 14 months before the stated signing date." One of the directors covered his mouth. Martin looked genuinely shocked. Shocked. I had spent enough years reading people to notice the difference. I turned to Caleb. A small muscle jumped beside his eye. "Who prepared this?" I asked. Vanessa turned toward him. Don't what?" I asked. "She means don't answer without counsel," Caleb said. I changed the screen again. This time it showed an email recovered from Vanessa's deleted folder. "Once the covenant breach is triggered, Red Harbor takes the voting block. MH will take the blame. Seach becomes CEO after the restructuring." The initials had seemed obvious: Martin Hale and Caleb Hale. But a second recovered email changed everything. "Is useful but temporary. After closing, remove both Hales." Martin read it slowly. Then he looked at Vanessa. "Both Hales." She said nothing. Caleb took the paper from him. "Your wife's plan," I said. "She intended to use your father to create the financial breach, use you to inherit the CEO position, and then remove both of you after Red Harbor took control." "That's a lie," Vanessa said. The conference room door opened. Lucas Cole entered with 2 attorneys. He stopped when he saw his name on the screen. "You said this was handled," he told his sister. Vanessa closed her eyes. Those 6 words ended her defense. What followed was chaos. Martin accused Caleb of betraying him. Caleb accused Vanessa of using him. Vanessa screamed that Lucas had written the emails. Lucas claimed Martin had approved everything. The directors talked over one another as years of false loyalty collapsed in minutes. I let them speak. People reveal the most when they believe the room is already burning. Then Martin said something that silenced everyone. "Evelyn, I can return the money. The money is not the only thing you stole. I protected this company for 11 years. You redirected warnings, threatened an employee's family, and placed my workers' jobs inside a scheme designed to enrich your own. I made one mistake." "No, Martin, you made hundreds of choices. The mistake was believing I would never look closely. I presented 3 resolutions. The first removed Martin Hale as CEO for cause. The second terminated Caleb and Vanessa immediately and prohibited them from entering company property. The third appointed Denise Park as interim chief operating officer and authorized an independent search for a permanent CEO. Because I controlled 74% of the vote, all 3 resolutions passed." Vanessa stared at me. "You can't destroy our lives over a misunderstanding." I looked at the trash can beside the conference table. She did not move. Ray stepped forward. Vanessa removed her gold executive badge and placed it in my palm. I did not throw it away. I handed it to Ray, because dignity is not weakness, and I refused to become the kind of person I had just removed. Then Miriam's phone vibrated. She read the message and leaned toward me. "The bank has frozen Red Harbor's accounts," she whispered. "But there's a problem. $11 million moved out last night. We're a holding company in the Cayman Islands." Vanessa smiled. It was a small, victorious smile. The boardroom battle was over, but the money and the proof that could put them in prison was disappearing. Vanessa believed the offshore transfer made her untouchable. She was wrong for one simple reason. The person who warned me about the forged loan agreement was Lucas. 3 days before the meeting, Lucas had contacted Miriam through an encrypted email account. He was not innocent. He had created North Star and accepted the money, but when he learned Vanessa planned to remove him after the takeover, fear overcame loyalty. He gave us account numbers, draft contracts, and recordings of 2 private meetings. In exchange, his attorneys hoped to negotiate with prosecutors. The $11 million transfer was not a successful escape. It was a monitored transaction. Federal investigators had allowed it to proceed, so they could identify the final account and every participant along the way. When Miriam whispered about the transfer, she was not warning me that we had lost. She was telling me the trap had closed. Vanessa's smile disappeared when 2 federal agents entered the room. They did not arrest anyone that morning. Real investigations are rarely as theatrical as television. They served warrants, collected devices, and instructed the 4 people involved not to destroy or alter records. For the next 9 months, Mercer Aeronautics lived under a cloud of rumors. Reporters waited outside the gate. Competitors called our customers and suggested we were unstable. Employees feared layoffs. Some directors urged me to sell before the company's value fell further. I refused. I had not spent half my life building a company, so that frightened men could sell it at the first sign of smoke. I moved into Thomas's old office, but I did not take his chair from the boardroom. Every morning, I met with small groups of employees. I told them what I legally could, admitted what I could not yet explain, and promised there would be no layoffs connected to the fraud. Then we proved that promise with action. We canceled the outsourcing plan. We restored the longtime supplier after a clean bidding review. We recovered most of the North Star payments through court orders and insurance. The board reduced executive bonuses and used the savings to protect hourly wages. I promoted Denise to permanent chief operating officer. Samuel remained chief financial officer after the independent investigation cleared him. He apologized to the staff for staying silent, and then he created a confidential reporting system that no CEO could control. As for the Hale family, consequences arrived slowly, then all at once. Martin pleaded guilty to wire fraud, obstruction, and unlawful access to financial credentials. He lost his position, his reputation, and the retirement package he had expected to receive. Caleb cooperated after discovering the full extent of Vanessa's plan. His cooperation reduced his sentence, but it did not erase it. A person can be manipulated and still be responsible for the doors he chose to open. Lucas also accepted a prison sentence and agreed to repay what he could. Vanessa went to trial. She insisted that every email had been misunderstood, every transfer had been authorized, and every witness had betrayed her. The jury heard recordings in which she described employees as numbers with health insurance. They saw messages planning to create a false covenant breach, seize my shares, and remove the Hales once they were no longer useful. She was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. At sentencing, her attorney described her as an ambitious young woman who had made poor decisions under family pressure. Vanessa asked to speak. She turned toward me and said, "Ms. Mercer ruined my life because I fired her." For a moment, the courtroom was completely still. Then the judge said, "No, Miss Cole Hale. Mercer discovered what you had already chosen to do." That sentence stayed with me. Revenge sounds powerful when you are hurt. It promises a clean moment when pain changes sides, but justice is different. Justice is not about making another person suffer as you suffered. It is about stopping the harm, exposing the truth, and rebuilding what their choices damaged. A year after the board meeting, I stood in the St. Louis production plant while employees gathered around a new aircraft component. It was part of an emergency helicopter system designed to remain stable in severe weather. The first completed unit carried a small engraved plate honoring Thomas. Denise handed me a new company badge. The title beneath my photograph read EVLYMRCH. I laughed. That is going to make it much harder to listen quietly. Maybe, Denise said, but people should know who stayed. That evening, I visited Thomas's grave. I told him about the investigation, the trial, and the workers whose jobs were safe. I told him I was sorry I had trusted silence more than scrutiny. And I told him the company was still ours, not because my trust held 74% of its shares, but because the people inside it still believed their work mattered. Before I left, I placed my old temporary badge beside his headstone. Ray had recovered it from the trash after Vanessa was escorted upstairs on that first morning. I had kept it as a reminder, not of the day I was humiliated, of the day arrogance finally told me the truth. Vanessa thought ownership was a chair, a title, and the power to throw someone away without looking up. She learned too late that real ownership is not proven by the badge you take from someone. It is proven by what you are willing to protect after everyone else has tried to steal it.